This presentation today is on recreation risk. State of Utah, we have some awesome recreation opportunities. I was looking through some statistics in preparation for this session, and it just really blew my mind the amount of outdoor recreation and indoor as well that we have in the state of Utah, and how the world is flowing to Utah for this. And that is for a number of reasons. It's abundant. We have parks and we have recreation facilities, we have sports venues, and lots of outdoor recreation. It's all around us. It's healthy recreation. And for the most part, you guys do an absolutely awesome job of running these things. They're good facilities, they're in good condition, and people can go and have a good time there. It's in the beautiful area of Utah. It brings our community together, and the nicest part about it is it's pretty darn cheap, particularly if you're dealing with our local government agencies. A lot of our parks and playgrounds, they're just wide open, free for the taking to go out and enjoy those facilities. Even the ones that we have to pay a fee to go into our recreation centers are really at a nominal price. So everybody really wants to participate in Utah's recreation, and I mean everybody. I was looking at these statistics like I was saying a second ago, and our national parks get over 10 million visits every year, 10.5 million in 2022. Our state parks even demand more than that, or receive more than that, 10.8 million visits to our state parks. And those numbers kind of blew me away. This recreation brings about $7.5 billion into our economy each year. And just other things I saw, 7.1 million skier days in 2023 season, and it's still happening. I think people are still hiking up in the Cottonwood Canyons and getting some turns in there. So what a place to enjoy recreation. Saw another statistic said about 1/10 of all Utah jobs are tied to recreation, outdoor recreation, in one way or another. And my thought about that, not just to throw out statistics about recreation, but every one of those recreation opportunities and visits, when people are participating in that, they're going to touch our local government agencies either directly or indirectly. People come to Utah to see the national parks. Well, I bet they're going to end up at a city park having lunch, or they're going to end up at the pool, or they're going to end up at one of your venues out there. So it touches all of our operations and has an impact there, which is great. That's one of the most gratifying parts of doing our job. We have all the good stuff that we do all the time, making sure the water's running, the sewer works, and all of the streets are there, and all of those things. But this is the fun stuff. This is the stuff that we enjoy. However, recreation is risky. Recreation has the potential for people to get hurt. And I choose to think of these recreation issues as a lot of times low frequency, high severity. Now, people get injured, they're out playing ball or they're doing things like that, but we don't hear about most of those things unless they're bad. And so they're not very often, but when they happen, they're really bad. So today I want to highlight each of these different areas in no particular order. I just kind of mixed them up, different recreation opportunities or facilities that we provide. And along with those, talk about their risk, and maybe a shocking story or two about each one of those things, and then talk about controls, risk management that we can do to reduce our risk or put ourselves in a better position to defend ourselves if there is a claim against our agency. Because unfortunately, things have changed. Recreation incidents happen. And in the old days, when a kid fell down and got hurt on the playground, a lot of times mom and dad said, well, you should have been more careful. more often than not, these days, we see a lawsuit around those types of injuries. And so more and more, we have to be prepared to defend ourselves when it comes to that. And some of the things that we talk about in here are prevention, and some of them relate to defense, and they're both important. One thing, I've said this for a long time, if you build it, they will sue, right? If we have property, if we have recreation facilities, there's a fairly good likelihood that during the time that we own that, we're going to get sued for something that happened there. You may or may not be responsible for that. And so how do we prevent that? Or how do we minimize the exposure to our organization is what we're going to hit today. All right, you will have claims. You will have opportunities to defend yourself. And I would just, at this point, highly suggest that you listen to the suggestions that we have in here, because it will make your life much easier when you're asked the questions. What did you know, and when did you know it? What did you do? Where's your documentation? And all of those things. They're important. Okay. So the next part is the individual areas of risk. Oh, wow, that would be scary. The individual areas of risk. And this is one that I get a lot of questions on. I thought I'd throw this out early, just because I think it's important. This time of year, we have our Town Day celebrations, we have our county fairs, we have the big special events that are out, and people are using our parks, they're using our facilities. And here's just the overall message that I want to get out. Matt Church is going to talk about contractual risk transfer. If we're bringing vendors onto our site, they're out there selling food or hawking jewelry or whatever it is that they might be doing as a business, we need to enter into a contractual risk transfer agreement with that organization. And what that means is you need to secure a certificate of insurance from them, making sure that they have insurance, general liability insurance in most cases, naming your organization as an additional insured. That's a really important point. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. Matt's going to cover the contract language and how those contracts work and all of those things. But I want to make sure that this part was included in this session as well. Sometimes we get a question, hey, well, these people don't do this kind of thing. This is the only fair or show that they do all year. They don't have any liability insurance. Well, there are lots of opportunities out there. There are lots of companies that sell short-term, really simple liability policies. Now, I am not advocating any one of these. This was a Google search where I ran through and found many companies, and so I'm not advocating these. There could be others that are better or cheaper or whatever, but the point behind putting on some of these websites is they're available. And if people want to buy a policy for just a couple of days or even a few hours on event, you can buy policies like that, and they're fairly economical for what you're getting from those. Okay. And Mike, go ahead and jump in if there's ever any questions that come up on this. I also wanted to talk about volunteers. This is also the time of year. Sorry, Mike, was there anything there? you popped up?
No, nothing. Just okay. Acknowledging.
Mike's like, hey, don't wake me up when I was just getting REM sleep. All right, volunteer risk. This is the time of year when we utilize a lot of volunteers for our events, for many different things that we do. And so this is the first one where we're starting out with our risk, our story, and our controls. And we'll hit that on each one of these as we move through this. What's the risk of a volunteer? Well, there are various risks. they're just like an employee. They can get injured. They can cause us problems. They can crash our vehicles. They can harass or discriminate against somebody that's out there. The difference is we don't have the same level of control over what they do because we're not giving them a paycheck. But we should treat them the same way we do an employee and put the same sort of controls in place. Catastrophic things that we've seen with volunteers: abuse, physical, sexual harassment, those types of things have happened over the years. And so we have to keep in mind that anytime we're dealing with people, we have the potential that they're going to do something dumb, or something pretty onerous as well. So a story: we had a volunteer, a search and rescue volunteer, slip on ice up in the mountains. Person was up doing some work in the mountains, search and rescue, slipped and fell and slid down a snowfield and fell into a crevasse and was seriously injured. Well, suddenly this organization had a really serious injury that they needed to deal with. It hit their workers' compensation cost, or workers' compensation premiums, and it hit their EMOD. And so we have potential risk with these volunteers. So a few things to think about on that. Number one, do we know who our volunteers are? To receive coverage for workers' compensation under state law in Utah, they need to be an approved volunteer. What does that mean? Well, they need to be on a list that your chief executive officer has approved, or their designee. It needs to be the approved volunteer list. And now we're not really talking about the community cleanup day when everybody comes out and works, but these are people who are actually regular volunteers with the city. What all do we do with these volunteers? Well, we should background check them based on the type of work they're doing. If they're working with sensitive populations like youth, maybe coaches, or other populations that may be at risk, or they're working with money, those types of things, we should put them through a background check process. Now, throughout this webinar, I'm going to be pointing to some other webinars that we've done. So if you have questions about background checks, somewhere, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, there will be a link that will pop up that will take you to that. If not, if you're watching live, go to our YouTube channel, and down in the middle there's a little magnifying glass, and you can search in our channel and just put in background checks and you'll find it. You need to have an agreement with this volunteer that says, here's your job duties, here's what we expect you to do, and here's what we're going to do for you. Just really outlining what this relationship is. Train your volunteers just as if they were an employee. If they're doing something that's more dangerous, we need to put the extra effort in to ensure that they are trained. All right, moving on to the next subject. And that subject is parks. Just in general, we have open space out in our parks where people can go and recreate or just take a rest, just enjoy nature. We see the risks there many times being trips, holes in a ball field, or places where people could step or trip. Electrical problems are common in our parks. So for a story, we had a mom at a park with her children. They'd had a nice day. She was packing up all of their belongings to go back to the car, and she stepped into a hole that had been washed due to irrigation water, rainwater. We don't know exactly what it was, but she just stepped into this hole, and it was deep. And she fell down and had a compound fracture and multiple other injuries that came from that. And as we looked at that, we found that hole had been there for a while, and that the organization hadn't documented inspections. We hadn't gone out and looked. We hadn't done our due diligence to point out what the hazard was and do something about it. So in those types of cases, it's pretty hard to defend against a claim. Well, it looks like we didn't do what we were supposed to. We weren't reasonable and prudent. And so that's pretty hard to defend against. So on controls, we want to design our facilities for safety. Think about how we put our parks together. What do they look like? Are they designed so the walking surfaces are safe? If we go out and we just take railroad ties and start making stairs and walkways out of railroad ties, we're probably going to have people trip and fall. If we put our walking surfaces on too steep of a slope, that puts people at risk as well. So let's go into these with really safety in mind. How do we keep those facilities safe? And then we need to inspect those facilities. We got to get out of the truck and take a look. This picture that's on here with the chain link fence upside down. Did you know there's a right side up and a wrong side up for this? Well, this is the wrong side up, and it provides a really nasty hazard there. That wire can tear you up if you're playing ball. If you try to climb over that fence, it's dangerous for us. So we make sure it's installed right. And if it's out around the ball field, we're going to put a cover over it. That piece of corrugated pipe goes along there and protects people from those hazards. Get out and look at those things. I found some really scary things in our parks over the years. Open electrical to 480 volts. I have found situations where kids could drown because of covers left off of manholes and grates in drains and irrigation systems. I found some really, really scary stuff over the years, and we're probably not going to see that from the road. So get out of the truck and take a walk through the park and inspect it. And before you take off in that truck, document what you found. I walked the facility and everything was good, or I walked the facility and I found a problem and I corrected it. That is an important piece of information for us if we ever have to defend against a claim. We're showing that we've been reasonable and prudent, we did the right thing, and we have the documentation to prove that we've done it. Okay. All right. Ball fields. Threw ball fields in here because they're a high intensity use. Most of the day they don't get a lot of use, but when those ball games happen, we get a lot of people in the area, and we have some unique risks. You could get hit by a baseball or a softball, whether you're playing or not. We had sorry, there's going to be a couple of stories on this. We had a child electrocuted by touching a chain link fence and the light standard because of a failed ground in an electrical system. Those are types of things that we need to look at and inspect prior to taking ownership of a new piece of equipment or facility property. And there's been a contractor working on it. There's a detail inspection that we need to do on that to ensure that safety is has been designed into that and installed that way. We had another story, sorry. We had a portable pitcher's mound. You know, in Little League, they'll have a pitcher's mound that they can make closer to home plate for the smaller children. Well, what do you do with that thing when you're not using it? Well, this organization had taken this pitcher's mound and pulled it up to a chain link fence along the sidewalk where a lot of people walk, and they chained it up with just a little light chain. Well, a gust of wind came along and put a lot of force on this big piece of equipment, and it broke the chain, and the pitcher's mound fell over, killing a small child. What do we have out there? I took this picture a long time ago with this harrow leaning up against the fence, and I just think it's a great example of how we may think, oh, I want to get this harrow out of the way. We use it to drag the infield of the ball field. well, it becomes a ladder to a kid, and that can tip over and kill a child. And so sometimes our best intentions of, oh, I don't want to have a trip hazard, I don't want to have that out there, we create a much more dangerous hazard. The reality is we should take that harrow and put it somewhere where the general public is not going to be walking, is not going to be around that. So let's talk controls for a second. Secure your equipment. Don't prop it up against fences. Get that equipment out of the way. Inspect regularly. Document those inspections. Let's prove that we did it right. If we have leagues or other organizations that are using our ball fields, our facilities there, we should have that contractual risk transfer agreement with them, along with the certificate of insurance. So Little League or another organization comes in and they're using our facilities, there should be that agreement between us, and they should be protecting us with that certificate of insurance. If you see something, take action. Don't stand around and say, oh boy, somebody sure ought to fix that. Take action on those things. And if that means that we close an area because there's a risk there, if that means that we have to shut down a ball game or an activity that's taking place there, if it's serious enough, let's do it. Take action when you see a problem. The next one, oh, I put this video on here so I can maybe tease you into this. The next subject is on cemetery risk, and you see this is my '64 Cadillac hearse. This is the lead into the video around this one. So go to our YouTube channel and watch it. It's all right. Cemeteries are great places, but they have their own risks. Slips, trips, and falls are the common types of injuries. But the catastrophic things, we've had multiple children in the state of Utah be crushed by monuments that have tipped over onto big rocks, right? Falling onto children and crushing them to death in some situations. So how do we control that? Well, we've got to get out and know what's going on. If I've got to, and I know there's a challenge with this. Hey, there's a family that owns that monument. They put it there. Well, we need to ensure it's safe for everybody to be in our cemeteries. And the process that you go through to secure those may take one route or another. If there's a family involved, sometimes there's nobody left. And we just own it, but let's make the commitment that we're going to secure those things, whatever it takes. If they become unstable, we've got to secure them. And other things, look for those hazards. Sometimes our irrigation systems in cemeteries are a problem. So remove those hazards, make those visible if we can't. Sometimes we have risers that are sticking up for sprinklers. Spray them orange, spray them safety yellow, and make sure they're visible for people so they know what those hazards are. Other things, we look at rodeo, equestrian. This kind of goes into, this kind of goes along with special events, but specifically for rodeo and equestrian events, this is risky stuff as well. What's the risk? Well, being struck by an animal. Well, we have some pretty good protections under state law from getting on a wild bull or horse and riding that. As long as we don't own the tack, and we haven't put people in a situation where they could be injured by our equipment, they're taking a lot of risk on themselves. But if you get struck by an animal, either kicked or run into, that can be pretty catastrophic. But there are also chances of lacerations and bruises and all kinds of things like that. A story on this one. We had a mom of a mutton buster climb up onto the bucking chute when her child was going to get onto the sheep. She was concerned about her child, I'm sure, and what was happening, or maybe getting a better place for taking a picture or a video. And here's what happened. She's walking along this bucking chute, and there's a gap, there's an opening in it with expanded metal there. And if you look really closely there, you can see those sharp, sharp ends. Well, she was wearing shorts and she fell down through this. It was an evening rodeo and visibility wasn't very good. And she received just horrific lacerations from this. I'm sure lots of people would walk past this many times. We got to get out there and look, and with an eye towards safety and build things for that. There may be things that have been built over the years that have never caused a problem, but the hazard is there. Let's take action when it comes to those things and keep people safe. Just a couple other things on equestrian. There is a requirement to put some signage up, and that's in state law if people are doing equestrian activities. And that's really a transference of risk to them. So put those signs up around our equestrian facilities. Identify what your problems are. Now, if somebody's riding a bull, they're taking that risk on themselves. But if we leave a bolt sticking out in the fence around the outside of that arena, and that person is impaled by that bolt, that's on us. So an unsafe condition is something that we could be found negligent for. All right. Always document. You guys are going to get tired of hearing me say inspect and document, but that's really, really critical. There's the language for the sign. Right about now, there's probably somebody out there saying, hey, what about we have those kids sign a liability waiver? Does that protect us? Well, waivers are very limited in their effectiveness. If it gets to a court of law, they're probably not worth the paper they're written on. They do have some value prior to that. And so I'm not telling you not to do those, but we need to be realistic about what the value of those waivers are. Now, I did a webinar on this about a year ago, probably. And on the YouTube version of this, there'll be a link somewhere on waivers. So I would recommend that you go out and watch that one. If you have questions about waivers, I go into a lot of detail. Well, let's talk playgrounds for a second. Playgrounds are one of the cool things that we have in our parks, but they're also one of the riskiest things that we have. Kids fall, they collide with each other, and they can have catastrophic things like head entrapment, where a kid can be hung and be killed through this playground equipment. So we've got to be smart about what we're doing. Story on this one: a kid was playing on a zip line, and unfortunately, I can start with that same sentence and tell you more than one story about with the same entry line on that, or opening line on that. A kid was playing on a zip line. Was the child's mother paying attention? Well, the only way that we know that child had a bad laceration that happened. Mother said, hey, this kid was doing everything right. I was watching, and it was just the equipment's fault. We said, hey, do you have any video surveillance cameras out there? Do you have any footage when this happened? And guess what? They did. And what we found was something very different than the events that were reported. So as we talk controls, I put this one on last, but cameras are pretty darn important. They don't lie. Now, they don't lie if the person that's accusing us of something is lying to us, but they also don't lie if we've got a problem. And so we live and die by those cameras, but think about, where do we put those cameras and what can they do for us? I'm telling you that there have been multiple instances where camera footage has totally changed the game when it came to a claim. So think carefully about that. On playgrounds, we need to identify problems and fix them. How do you know what the problems are? Well, you need to train your people. And how do we train people on that? Well, we got a webinar for that, but we also have an opportunity that I think they're doing it twice a year now. The Utah Recreation and Parks Association is sponsoring NRPA coming in, National Recreation and Parks Association, to do the playground safety inspector course. It ain't easy. It's a challenging course, and you'll be learning a lot of stuff. It's a couple of days of class and a test, right, Mike? Was it 2 days and a test?
4 days of a test.
Was it that far? Is it that
Yeah.
long? Yeah. Anyway, it's all a blur in my mind. I've done it a lot of times, and it's a challenge, and it changes over time. But we highly recommend that you get your at least one person in your parks organization certified as a CPSI. Then they know what to look for, and they can help you. They can help you know where the problems are. Just like this, Mike, did you have something you wanted to share?
Nope.
Oh, okay. You popped up there, so I thought you might have something. Just like some of these other things that I've seen, I have found some really scary stuff on our playgrounds around the state. I took this picture a couple of years ago, and from the road, everything looked great. But look at this. This was, you think that hardware goes with that swing? That bolt was just put in there because there was a problem, and it was loose. It was ready to hurt a kid. And you wouldn't notice it unless you're looking for it. So we've got to get out there and look at that. Oh, hey, by the way, there's a video on this on our YouTube channel about swings and about playground inspections and all of those things. Let's talk water. Mike thought he was talking fast. Oh, ow. Mike thought he was talking fast this morning. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. Just water in general. Now, if I've got a canal running through my city, and we have pretty good protection from liability of just a natural, or a river. If a waterway is in its natural state, we have some pretty good protection for that. But the more that water body looks like a swimming pool, the more we're held to the swimming pool standard. So we have to be very careful about ponds and lakes and things like that. If we make improvements, that reduces our ability to use those routes to defend ourselves. So we've got to be really careful with that. We also have to be smart. The story on this one, we had a toddler crawled through a hole in a fence that was next to a canal, and the toddler got through. The parent was not aware of what happened, and the toddler fell in the canal and drowned. We have to be smart about those things. There was a hole in the fence. Had we identified it? Those are the things that we're going to be asked those questions out there. Did you inspect it? Did you look for it? What did you do when you found it out? Let's get out of the truck and go identify those things and fix them. Cameras, once again, are important for these things. All right, I'm going to throw this to Mike right now, because this is definitely his bailiwick.
Yeah, I don't know if all of you have seen this. This happened just a few weeks ago in Colorado. Ventilation system collapsing at the pool. Scary stuff. Lots of people injured, and this is really what we're trying to get ahead of, is this kind of stuff. These inspections that Jason's talking about. Go ahead and go to the next one.
Okay. Sorry.
No, you're fine. So yeah, our risks at aquatics, huge liabilities for us in aquatics. Lots of risks that we're taking on with a swimming pool. They're fun. They're fantastic. They are great community things for our people to have, which is why we at the Trust, we really take these really, really seriously. And we have a whole program built around the aquatic centers. Because things that are common, I mean, slips and collisions, and I mean, all the way from the little teeny tiny things to the catastrophic drowning events that we have happen at the aquatic centers. We want to avoid those things. The things that we want to do, we want to make sure our staff is trained. We want to make sure we're inspecting. And the Trust Aquatics program that I administer here at the Trust is incredibly valuable in helping to take a lot of this risk and let's talk about it and see what we can do to minimize it. I mean, we can't completely eliminate it, but this is an area where we can really make a big dent. Jason talked a little bit ago about cameras. Cameras are at your swimming pool facilities are absolute game changers. You want to make sure if you have camera systems though on your pool facilities, that they are good cameras, that they're constantly running, and it's a constant. They don't just motion activate or anything like that, but they constantly go. So if there is an incident at the facility, that what happened, so that we know what happened, so that we can defend that, so we can watch a lifeguard perform a rescue and do those things, and make sure that if there's a rescue that needs to happen, that it happens correctly. I mean, there are tons of stories out there about drownings and about lifeguards missing a person who has been drowning, but there's also, for as many stories as of a lifeguard missing a drowning victim, there's also 10 to 20 stories of a lifeguard recognizing a drowning victim, jumping in and doing what they're supposed to do to save somebody. And those are the stories that we want to have happen, right? Things are going to happen. People are going to come to your swimming pool facility. They're not going to know how to swim. You're going to have a little 5-year-old get away from mom or dad. You're going to have mom or dad on their cell phone texting while their son or daughter is playing on the pirate ship, and they don't notice. We got to make sure our staff's ready and able to notice those type of accidents happening, because those are the things that we have to really get ahead of, because aquatics are such a huge risk for us, but they're such a huge part of the community here. It's particularly here in the state. We have our municipalities and our service districts. We do a great job with our aquatic centers. I can tell you from going to visit each and every pool that the trust has throughout the entire state. I mean, starting the gauntlet this month, going out to all of our summer pools, and these folks do a fantastic job. We just got to keep doing what we're doing. If you're in charge of maintenance, or if you go out to the pools and you do inspections as a parks crew, we absolutely advocate for you going out and doing these inspections, getting out, walking these parks, walking these aquatic centers, getting out and really looking at the deck, really looking at the play materials, the pump rooms, things like that. Please get out and do it. I know we do it for you. I know we come out. I come out once, twice, or 3 times a year and do it, but I'm only there once or twice or 3 times, and you're open all year, or you're open during the summer for 3 months. Please get out and inspect and make sure that these facilities are the safest they can be. Bare feet on the pool deck, I mean, that's bad news. Slips and collisions are bad news, but we want to avoid those big ones.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I really appreciate that. And Mike is passionate about this. This is one of the reasons why Mike is here. He's an expert on this stuff. We built this program around Mike and around you. And Mike gets out there and he not only looks at facility issues, but he also tests your systems. Tests to see if your lifeguards are able to do the tasks that they need to do, and this is a really powerful program, and it's produced some huge results and improvements in your operations. So definitely participate. And when Mike sends you a report and says these things need to be done, they need to be done. This is we call these nuclear reactors. A kid drowns. That's about as bad as it gets in your town, and so we want to prevent these, and this is how you're going to do it. So, yep. All right, moving on. Golf is one of those things. Great pastime, fun to walk around in the beautiful green grass and all of those things, but there are a lot of hazards that go along with it. Even some catastrophic things. We had a golf course worker who was out picking up balls on the driving range in the little car, got out and got hit in the head, and suffered serious head injuries from getting hit with a golf ball. So In our golf operations, we need to identify where our problem areas are. Where are those errant golf balls going to get away from us? Are they going to whack people? Are they going to whack cars or buildings? And we need to deal with those. We need to screen those. Plantings can be good, all of those things, but let's think about safety in our golf operations as well, and also think about our staff. How do we keep them safe when they're out doing their job? What kind of policies are in place? What kind of equipment is in place? All right, I know I gotta keep going. Bike parks is another area where we've seen significant growth in the recreation industry in the last few years, and members of the trust have been installing bike parks, and they're cool. There's some really neat things, and there's some great ones around the state, and there are some scary ones around the state. And what's the big difference between those? And what's the difference between injuries and not having as many injuries, or being able to defend those claims should they come, and not being able to defend those? A lot of that comes down to planning. Comes down to engineering and designing these facilities so that they're designed for safety. There's risk involved. We get it. You're out jumping a bike. You're riding downhill in most cases on a bike, and you can gain a lot of speed. But there are things that you can do to design safety into this and give people an out. One of the standard things that we say, no gap jumps on these. We want to do rollers. We want to give people an opportunity. If they chicken out at the last minute, or they're not quite as good a rider as they thought they were when they started down the hill, they've got an opportunity to bail out. But a gap jump doesn't allow that. And so that's one of those big things. And if you're considering one of these, or you have one of these, talk to us. We'd love to chat with you about bike parks. They can be done really well. But if it's somebody says, hey, you guys have got a vacant lot out here, I got a backhoe, or we borrowed a backhoe, can we make a bike park? That's a bad start to a story. And so let's think about how we do it. Let's do it right. Okay. Tis the season. It is the season for parades. And I have to be the guy that rains on the parade as often as I can, because it comes down to kids. There's a lot of risk that comes with parades. The most common risk of parades is boredom. But it can be catastrophic. And unfortunately, over the years, we've had multiple children killed by being run over by floats or vehicles in these parades. And that is a tragedy that doesn't need to happen if we have a good parade program. A basic rule that we have, I actually had to throw it on a second page because there's some things that I wanted to talk about. If I've got a truck pulling a trailer, don't put any riders in the bed of the truck, and don't allow anybody to get there. Because people are tempted to go back and forth between the truck and trailer. And if they walk the tongue of the hitch, there's a fair chance that they're going to fall and they're going to get crushed. And there's so much activity going on that drivers have a hard time being able to react in time. Don't allow that stuff. Make sure everybody only enters or exits the parade at the starting line. We don't want cars going in and out. We don't want vehicles going in and out. Candy should only be distributed or thrown by walkers. Those walkers are your safety folks as well. They are designed to walk along the edges and keep those kids back. And so we keep them away from those dangerous wheels on the floats. Inspect the floats. I know you're going to be the person that's raining on the parade, but we don't want to have a float catch on fire. There have been situations where floats have caused carbon monoxide poisoning. There have been issues with animals and all of those things. Let's take a look. If you see somebody's riding a horse and it's having a bad day, don't hesitate to pull them out. Don't hesitate to pull anything out of your parade. It's your event. You own it. Don't take any garbage. and let people know the rules to start with. Publish those rules and say, here's what we expect of you when you're participating in our parade. All right, I've gone on too long on that. Just like Mike is passionate about the aquatics program, I'm passionate about parade safety. That's just one that we can prevent if we'll do it. Gyms and fitness centers, we have a lot of those that are out there, part of our recreation program. And unfortunately, at the gym, there's some dumb things that happen. There's common stuff, trips and slips and sprains, injuries happen on that, but catastrophic things can happen as well. Children's fingers can get amputated in equipment, but adults can as well. We've seen where resistance bands, like that guy was sitting on, but where you're, trying to do whatever exercise, have failed and shot into people's eyes, damaged their eyes, or caused them to lose eyes, or cause damage elsewhere. Don't allow people to bring their own bands and things like that in there. They should only be using the equipment you provide there, and don't let them modify it. It should only be used how it should be used. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Keep that owner's manual there and install it exactly the way the manufacturer says, and maintain it exactly the way the manufacturer says. Then if something goes wrong, we've been reasonable and prudent. Inspect it, look at it, and document what you do. I knew I was going to be running out of time about here, so I didn't throw in the slide on skate parks, but we did throw in the video. This next part, and I believe about the last slide, is on bigger, higher, and faster. It seems like there's a trend that we're always looking at what is the next coolest thing that's out there. What's the extreme thing that will get people to come and use our facilities more? And I get it. I understand marketing. I understand the reason why we would want to do those things, but it also many times puts us in a really bad position. And I say on here, what are the risks? Well, a lot of times they're unknown. A lot of times they're scary things that we just don't know because it's new. Here's one of those: a kid on a zip line, a kid on a slack line. We had a family set up a zip line in one of our parks in the state, and it was a serious zip line. It was up on a hill above the baseball diamond, and one of their teenage kids fell off of it and got a severe head injury and has lifetime medical needs now from that. We've got to be paying attention to what's happening in our parks and take action. Have rules around your park, what people can do, and not just parks, all of our facilities that are out there. Take action on those things. When it comes to the activities that we do your due diligence. Look into that. If you've got questions, we're not sure about this, shoot it to Mike or myself, and we'd love to chime in on that, what we think about it. There are some things that local government agencies just shouldn't do. There are certain activities, events, those types of things. There's probably somebody out there, a private organization, that would be happy to do that and take on the risk, pay for the insurance to do those things. But let's be smart, and then, of course, constantly document those things, document our inspections of those things. Okay. Just to wrap up quickly, let's plan for success. That means we've got to be involved all the way through the process. Identify what the hazards are. Take action on those hazards. If I can get rid of them, do that. If not, I'm going to mitigate what those hazards are. Know what your facilities, know what's happening. Get out of the truck, get out and inspect the facilities. Fix the problems that we find, document. And I know I've said that 87 times in this presentation, but that is critical. That is a key piece of evidence if something goes wrong. And think what could go wrong, what's the worst thing that could happen, and think through in your mind what that is going to look like in your world. And that will help us in our decision making. folks, that was a lot of stuff that I said, and we pushed the envelope a little bit long on the time. I apologize for that, but I do think these are critical topics this time of year. If you have any questions, please type those into the chat box, comments. If you don't want to talk about those now, give us a call. Send us an email. We would be happy to discuss these things as we go into this really busy recreation season. Mike, do we have any questions?
Nope, no questions. Just a comment that, fireworks and livestock don't tend to mix well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's one you bring up fireworks, and that's one that I didn't throw in. I didn't throw in here because of time, but I will just say on that, just because somebody's a firefighter, that does not make them a pyrotechnician. Your people who are setting off your fireworks you need to have at least one certified pyrotechnician on staff. If you don't have that, hire the contractor to put on your fireworks show. Firefighters can be there to put out any fires that may happen, but just because they're a firefighter doesn't mean that they're an expert in that. There's training that is provided. The off-state fire marshal can help out with that. But let's get people there that know what they're doing. We've had some really scary stuff happen on fireworks as well, coming into the Independence Day holiday. So,
yeah.
Okay. Mike, anything I missed?
No, that was great. I mean, there's a lot of information there. There's so many different things. And we just appreciate you guys' time for being here. And like I said, if there's questions about any of this stuff, any of this, risk around rec and anything like that, please let us know. We're more than happy to help out.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. And just remember, on each individual part of this, we probably have an individual webinar on that where we dive into detail. So go to our YouTube channel, click on the little magnifying glass in the middle of the page when you're on the channel, and search for it there, and you're going to find what you need. Thanks, folks. Appreciate all you do out there and all of your efforts to make Utah a safer place, and to make our recreation programs the best they can be and as safe as they can be. Thanks. Have a safe day.